Basu Godin Notebook. 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 Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Basu and Godin Notebook. I'm Marc-Antoine Godin. I'm with Arpin Basu. Arpin, we're in different cities, but we're both on the West Coast because you're following the Montreal Canadiens. You're in Seattle now, and I'm just a bit south in LA for Game 3 of the World Series. I'm not boasting or bragging or anything, but these are the facts.
You're bragging a little bit. There's a little bit of a brag there.
Well,
I'm gonna go see Kraken Habs on Tuesday, and you're gonna go see Game 3 of the World Series tonight.
yeah,
So, yeah,
that's
you can
okay.
brag. It's okay. You can brag. It's fine. It's fine.
It's just that's how that's the cards that we were dealt. All right, we will have a big show today. Obviously, as every Monday, we have our mailbag. We have our guest today. We will be joined later on by Pierre Lebrun, our good friend from The Athletic, TSN, and so many other outlets now.
Yes.
And
his introduction list would be like a page long. Like
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's tax deductions too. But before that, I mean, before we go to Pierre. So the Canadiens have crossed the 10-game line. So we're going to discuss maybe figuring out some sort of conclusions to draw from these first games. But I mean, we have to tackle the news of the Canadiens losing Patrik Laine for 3 to 4 months after surgery for a sports hernia. What do you think it changes for the Canadiens knowing that they don't have the player for an extended period of time? It's one thing to hope to say, okay, well, we're going to reorganize things and give a spot for the time being to Joseph Veleno as a regular guy. But the fact that it's such a lengthy absence, what do you make of it?
I mean, it's unfortunate for Laine. I mean, that's my first reaction, is that it's unfortunate for Laine. It's yet another challenge for this guy. He put that Muhammad Ali quote up on his Instagram story. You know, you're not beaten if you get knocked down. It's if you stay down or something like that. And, he's being knocked down again, and that's tough. And he had worked so hard all summer. I'm not going to go so far as to say he looked great, but he had definitely looked different. He was trying. He was making a concerted effort to be better in the areas of the game that Martin St. Louis was asking to be better in. But the reality is that they didn't quite know what to do with him. He was still kind of in the lineup as a power play option. He was on power play 2, which wasn't getting a whole lot of time.
No.
That we've talked about a lot over the course of since the season began. So there was a bit of a square peg, round hole kind of feel to him. I think Joe Veleno just fits more seamlessly in what they're trying to do 5-on-5. The other night after the game against Vancouver, one of the only, I think it's fair to say one of the only lines that really had a good night at 5-on-5 that night was the Doc Veleno line. And Marty after the game said it was important for them because Doc was quite bad on Thursday. Let's call a spade, like on his return after the injury, the brief injury, absence that Doc had. He did not look great against Edmonton. He had one goal in particular that was completely on him and just had a brain fart in the defensive zone. So to bounce back was encouraging. But when Marty said, it allows us to come in waves, it allows us to be a 4-line team, which you said after the game against Vancouver, like that is what Laine was kind of preventing. And so the bigger question to me is not what do they do in his absence, is what do they do when he's healthy?
Right.
What do they do when he's back, which is clearly far, far in the future at this point. And the 3 to 4 month timeline is interesting because that would seemingly put his Olympic participation in jeopardy, right? Like 3 months, the difference between 3 months and 4 months is basically the Olympics. Like 3 months would be the end of January, 4 months would be the end of February. So that is the Olympic window. So um, it had become obvious that there was no real solution as to like him playing with Jake Evans and Josh Anderson was just not working. It's no coincidence that as soon as Brendan Gallagher jumped on that line, both of those guys became far more effective, were able to play to their identity. Laine's absence also led indirectly, but somewhat directly. Marty mentioned it as a factor in moving Ivan Demidov to the top power play unit, which obviously on Saturday we saw the results of that. But not having Laine on PP2, it made even less sense to have Demidov there because his trigger man was gone on that unit. So I don't think it really hurts the Canadiens in the short term. Obviously, you lose a player of that talent; it's not nothing, but it does allow pieces to kind of fall into place somewhat more seamlessly in the sense that Demidov is where he belongs now on power play one, which is unfortunate for Zach Budzik, and really that is a trigger man that the power play two inherited to kind of replace Laine, but and Veleno kind of fits with how they want to play and what they want to do, and I think he's looked pretty good in the games that he's played and deserves to play. And so my question is if this continues this way, like what do they do when Laine comes back?
Right. Well, I got an idea. you might you might think that it's crazy, but hear me out. So I think that the Canadiens would be in a position where they could trade Patrik Laine. They could trade Patrik Laine before Christmas, so that it would allow the team that acquires him a window of more than 75 days to flip him at the deadline. If you trade Patrik Laine's contract and you retain 50% on it, and then more than 75 days later, that the team that acquired him trades him again and retains 50% of what's left. I think that for any team who's in need of offense, in need of a spark on the power play, and who's a competitive team, a playoff team, but says we're short a few goals, then taking a chance on Patrik Laine at 2.175 million for prorated for the rest of the season is a lot more enticing than the reality of just trading his contract as a whole, which is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So from the Canadian standpoint, they would save, I don't know what would be the asset that they would have to give up in order to do that, but they would save half of his contract. And then that would enable them to make an ad that would not affect their salary envelope if they want to have a bigger acquisition down the road. Because Veleno works for now, but if they think that they need a more reliable 200-foot guy, reliable winger, and a guy maybe who could play on the PK regularly,
a playoff hardened guy.
Exactly, a guy also
Yes.
who's more like rugged. They could make that acquisition and still keep some assets and money available for a bigger acquisition at the trade deadline if one shows up. But I think that obviously it's important that the outgoing assets would remain as low as possible. But then the team acquiring Laine, could then flip him and then get two assets for their service. One from the Canadiens and another one, probably more attractive, for sending Laine and at only a fraction of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, because otherwise, if Laine stays, I mean, as we know, it makes no sense for the Canadiens to put him on the LTIR. You want to keep accruing cap space, so there's no point there. But even when he comes back, unless there's a rash of injuries, he's unlikely to ever come back on PP1. And as you said, with Veleno and probably with some other guys too, they're better off with other options at 5-on-5 in order to come in waves. So, in any luck, with any luck, Laine will play a few games before the Olympics or at the Olympics and would prove that he's okay to finish the season. But in order to do that, he would need to be traded by roughly December 18th, 20th in order to fit that 75-day window. So I think that there's a possibility there.
Hmm.
It needs creativity, and it needs a team also that believes that Laine could be flipped again at the deadline. But if you find such a partner, it would it would help the Canadians down the road.
It's not totally crazy. It's a little crazy, but it's not totally crazy. I don't. I think
I like a little
it's
crazy.
well, honestly, and to be honest, like I do wonder, the, you know, the retention window. I wonder if that's going to create a secondary trade market.
Hmm.
You know, that far out from the deadline, from with that date that you mentioned, basically. Um, that's an interesting thing, and I think there are definitely teams that are going to be looking at situations like that. Um, I wonder, like a team like Dallas, ultimately as the final destination. A lot of Finns.
Yeah.
You know, adding. Like, it's not that they don't have offensive firepower, but adding kind of a sniper to their power play might be an ingredient that they might think could push them over the top. Who knows? Um, but yeah, it's well, like in terms of a flip partner, in terms of someone looking. I mean, obviously San Jose jumps to mind. Um, they've been pretty clear that this is not their year, and that I think getting two assets to do that would be of interest to them. They already have Carey Price on their books, and
Mm.
so this would be a similar kind of transaction. But that's interesting. I like, if you're San Jose, can you be that sure he's even going to be healthy by the trade deadline? Like, that's the problem. This 3 to 4 month timeline. 4 months would be the end of February. It's February 25th, which is basically the return from the Olympic break.
Yeah.
You have a short window between the Olympic break returning and the trade deadline, which is March 6th or March 8th,
That's
something
right.
like
March
that.
6th.
So you have to count on him, A, being healthy in that time, B, coming back and playing a few games to prove that he's tradable, and performing in those few games that he plays, which is that's a big gamble. That's a lot. That's a big ask. The one
Yeah.
thing about San Jose, though, is they can put him in every premium situation that he could possibly want. They could play him with Macklin Celebrini if they wanted to for a few games, and it's like,
Sure.
hey, look at this guy. He's lighting it up. But yeah, it's interesting. It's I hadn't considered that. It's but it would be a big. Well, it wouldn't be a huge risk in the sense that you're collecting an asset from Montreal to do it. Probably not a great asset. I mean, San Jose might feel like Montreal owes them one in terms of how cheaply they took on Carey Price's contract. So maybe they'll be like, you guys
Well,
you owe us something from that. So I don't know, but
well,
the
it
cost of
needed.
that transaction would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it needs. I mean, it should not be. It should not be problematic for the other acquisitions that you don't take into the pool of very juicy, attractive assets that will make your team that much better in other player acquisitions. So it would, yeah, again, not acquisition cost, but the price to pay in this case
Yeah,
uh,
sweetener
would
cost.
would would need to be rather low. But I thought it's just an outside the box idea because I think that your expression of a square peg in a round hole applies perfectly here.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah,
and I think it's a good outside the box thought. It's just, I think it's going to be hard to execute, but I think teams are definitely going to need to look at that time frame and see if there's double retention that can be done. And he would obviously, yeah, he would fit the bill. But
mm,
I don't think, I don't know what the market is for Patrik Laine in terms of the ultimate flip, the
right.
deadline flip. If you're a team that's willing to do this, it's also not the end of the world if you're not able to flip him at the end. Like, ultimately, you acquire a guy, and at half his cap hit, you got a draft pick to do it. And if you can't flip him at the deadline, then so be it. Then he plays out the year, then he's a free agent, and that's it. You wipe your hands clean. So yeah, maybe that's yeah. You've had worse suggestions for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh gosh, yeah.
but
Depends
but
on the
we'll
time
see.
of the day.
Yeah, that's right.
Late at night, we all make bad decisions.
Yes.
All right, but moving on.
Yeah.
Look, it's so the Canadiens have played 10 games. They're going to play their 11th in Seattle on Tuesday.
Mhm.
And look, I mean, at first glance, what sort of I know it's early in the season, but I mean, it's still what 1/8 of the season that's being played right now. I guess there's a few conclusions that we can make out of this. I think that if there was any concern, for example, about Ivan Demidov adjustment to the NHL and the impact that it could have on the Montreal Canadiens, any concern or wonder about that has been resolved because he's indeed very impactful. But beyond that, what do you make of the first 10 games that the Canadiens played?
Uh, I think people are forgetting their relatively low strength of schedule. I think that's quickly been sort of forgotten. You have to play the schedule that you're given, and so kudos to them to bank points. I don't know if the brand of hockey that they've played through 10 games will allow them to bank points against better teams. They should have won that game in Edmonton, so we'll
Yes.
give them that. They played extremely well in that game. They should not have won the game Saturday against Vancouver. They were terrible for most of that game. And their power play, fueled by Ivan Demidov, got them out of that. And that's good teams do that. You can, and that's the beauty of having a good power play. Like if Ivan Demidov makes their power play that good, it'll get them out of a lot of bad games with wins. And so that's a positive. But I think defensively, there's a lot to like with what Montreal has been doing. But generally, 5-on-5 play um, has been hit or miss. It's not really a consistent brand of hockey that they're playing. They've shown like a clutch gene at times, late game, pulling out late game. I mean, even against Vancouver, like they went into the third period down and
Yeah.
pulled out a win. So, um, but again, you'd like to see a more sustained ability to attack and to control the flow of play, and really they have one line doing that, and that's obviously the Suzuki line, which is still one of the best lines in the league, and so that's encouraging too. But yeah, I think overall through 10 games, I think even the Canadiens would admit that it's been far from perfect, and they're kind of punching above their weight a little bit in terms of how they've played um, as a whole, you know. But the pockets of good that we've seen is encouraging. It's just that it's just not there. Forget game to game, period to period. It's not consistent enough.